Earlier this week, YouTube slyly pushed out a new policy change that has had a wildly large effect on tons of channels in terms of demonetizing their content and as well as just generally making it very difficult for some creators to continue to produce what they have been. They still haven't said anything about this, to my knowledge, at least not publicly or clearly. They're remaining silent on it, treating it like it's the Coca-Cola secret formula here. They're, for some reason, very apprehensive to tell people about this, so I've become the unofficial messenger of letting people know what's going on. I made a video on this 4 days ago, and I don't want to just repeat myself here, but they released this policy change, and it's all in plain English, but it might as well be hieroglyphics because it leaves so much room for interpretation, and the way that it's currently being enforced seems completely random. But I'm going to go ahead and give you like the general breakdown of what I've talked about and also what I've now learned. So they've changed their rules around profanity, making it a lot more strict in my opinion, where pretty much all profanity is treated equally, whereas before things like fuck were considered a different tier which could lead to demonetization. Now, if you even say ass or dirty butt, there's a chance you might get demonetized for that kind of foul potty mouth if it's said within the first 8 to 15 seconds of a video. That's the safe space, like a treaty with YouTube, where if you violate it and you say anything that's not part of just standard Queen's English, you're going to get demonetized, no questions asked, and you can't really argue otherwise. It's not going to get changed. However, if you've got the mouth of a sailor and you happen to say too many naughty words throughout a video, you can also get demonetized for that, but it's very unclear exactly what the limit is. What's too many naughty words? How many fucks are we allowed, No one really knows yet, but it seems all over the place. And keep in mind, since now there's no longer like a tier list of swear words where, fuck is S tier and we're afraid of that at YouTube, they're all in the same tier except for a couple exceptions like hell and damn. Now there's a chance that if you go on a shitting spree where you're just, mentioning shit, you get real heated in a game, you're like, man, you're such a pile of shit, the worst gamer of all time. Like, if you say that too many times, I believe it now carries a risk of demonetization since it's viewed in the same light as saying fuck a lot. That's all still very muddy, but they're clearly cracking down harder on profanity in general. And now I want to talk about something that I didn't even know existed when I made the last video that a lot of people have been talking about. And it's not 100% confirmed, so take it with a grain of salt. But there's something called auto-generated captions on YouTube, which I'm sure you've seen and used before. And they can occasionally have a conniption. Like, it'll get the words wrong when they try and transcribe them, and it just looks like a fucking game of Mad Libs. Like, it's completely all over the place from time to time, very off the mark, sometimes just genuinely gibberish, like someone waking up after a deep slumber and fumbling all of their words around. But as far back as 2018, these auto-generated captions can have an effect on the monetization status of a video. So if the auto-generated captions misunderstand a word, like in this example, they thought one of the words was porn, it can lead to a demonetization, allegedly. Again, this is all speculative, but since this new policy has been rolling out in such huge force with tons of channels being hit and this massive wave of demonetization, some family-friendly channels are getting caught here, and they're all very confused because they don't use profanity, they don't play violent video games, and yet they're still getting demonetized, and they've been wondering why. So they turned back to potentially the auto-generated captions getting words wrong, and in a couple of cases it seems like that seems to have been the culprit. So again, not 100% confirmed, and that may be just like a fluke and happens occasionally, but it is worth mentioning because I think it's statistically significant in light of how strict YouTube now seems to want to be on profanity. But the big one that I'm going to be focusing on today that I've learned a lot about recently is the violent content policy changes. I did mention it in the last one, but I've learned a lot more about it now. I'm going to talk about the violent gaming content policy changes in a moment since I already touched on those and I've only learned a little bit more about it. But where I learned a lot more is just general violent content, no matter what the genre. Animation, hand-drawn, cartoon, anything. Like even just still images. So in the last video, I mentioned that one of my most recent uploads got demonetized with this new wave out of nowhere when there's no profanity until like the very end of the video, and the only thing that pops up before then is our trailer for God Slap 2, which is an animation and there is violence towards the end of that trailer. It's about 15 seconds worth of like blood and gore. But that comes at a minute 45 into the video, which is way outside of their 15 to 30 second grace period where they don't want anything violent. And it got demonetized. So I speculated it got demonetized because that content was deemed too violent. Even though I don't think it was anything disturbing or shocking over the top violence, I speculated that that must have been the case since profanity wasn't an issue. Violence also wasn't an issue in the early parts of the video or anything. It's just 15 seconds that does have some blood and guts. I asked YouTube directly, and my representative told me that I was probably right. Most likely what caused that demonetization is it was flagged for being too violent to be monetized because of that one 15-second scene. Now, of course, I may be biased, but I really don't think that this is too shockingly gory and gross where people are going to be fucking puking after seeing it. But it did show me that not only are they cracking down on like violent gaming content, they're cracking down on violent content in any medium, even just animated. And I really just still don't think that this is that violent to begin with. At least not enough to warrant a demonetization because again, this wasn't demonetized until this new policy rolled out. Not just video games, it's not just animated content, it's not just real life content where someone's like in a fight or something like that, or someone gets like a tooth knocked out. It's also just still images of just drawn images, like just a fucking picture, like a cartoon picture, not even an animated one, not even a picture that moves. I learned this by watching Comics Explained new video where he reviews our Godslap comic book. I don't know if it's just this policy hates Godslap or if this really does extend to just any kind of medium at all, including just still images, but regardless, Comics Explained posted this video reviewing issue 1 of Godslap. It was a very, very sweet review, and I really appreciated it. The whole team found it to be super, super nice, and I'm really happy to hear that he liked it so much. However, he got demonetized for even posting some of the frames. Now, there is violence and gore in the comic, of course, but once again, it's just comic book pages. I don't think it's anything that's like egregious and tasteless or anything that I feel warrants demonetization. It's kind of ridiculous just how strict this violent content policy is. There's no profanity in the first 30 seconds or anything. Everything from this video plays by YouTube's ad guideline rules, except for the vagueness of their violent content policy change. So just even showing some panels that have violence got him demonetized. So it is extremely strict. They're coming down very, very hard on anything that's not YouTube Kids oriented, it feels like. Violent gaming content now can get age restricted and demonetized far more frequently than we've ever seen before. I've been on this platform since 2006, on this channel since 2007. I have never seen such strict enforcement of violent gaming videos. I swear to God, if you're playing a game where you're not giving kisses to the enemy to defeat them, you're probably going to get demonetized for it now. I've had a ton more videos on games get demonetized recently than I would have ever expected. Of course, I'm exaggerating a bit. I'm not trying to put the fear of God in anyone. I'm not trying to say that if you play Roblox Shadow Company and you get too many kills too quickly, the video's going to get demonetized for fucking violent terrorism because you piled up too many bodies too quickly. I'm just saying that they're cracking down on violent gaming content, and a lot of videos I've made on just normal shooters that weren't demonetized before are demonetized now. When it's not anything that's like shocking or disturbing or anything like that, it's just normal games. And if we turn our attention to the policy itself when it comes to gaming, it becomes even more confusing because in this policy here on what can earn ad revenue under gaming, it says graphic scenes like gory attacks outside the first 15 seconds of the video or violence that's unrealistic, all of that. Like, this is the old policy. Like, that sounds normal. The only difference is now it seems like they just don't want the video to start with violent gaming content. Like, they don't want the video to open and all of a sudden it's the scene out of Outlast where you're getting your dick cut off or anything. That's fine. That's not like the biggest change in the world that's gonna like ruin entire creators' channels or anything. It's pretty easy just to make sure that for 15 seconds you don't have like wild blood and gore splattering all over the screen, and also keeping violent thumbnails out of it is another thing that they clearly don't want. All of that's totally normal and totally easy to play around. But then I started scratching my head because when you go into the limited or no ad revenue section and go to gaming, again, the first thing makes sense, don't want any gory shit or anything violent in the thumbnail or in the beginning. They've made that clear. But underneath that, graphic game violence includes brutal killings or severe injuries focusing on bodily fluids and parts such as beheading and dismemberment. I get the bodily fluids. They don't want pee, poop, vomit, cum squirting all over the place. Okay, I get that. But dismemberment and, severe graphic killings, what exactly does that mean? Like, I don't think in any of the gaming videos that most creators make, the focus is on the dismemberment and gore and, like doing snow angels and intestines and blood on the floor. However, it seems like those videos are getting hit regardless just because there is that component to the games sometimes. And dismemberment in games has been commonplace for fucking 20 years now. Team Fortress 2, when you die, you can get like insta-gibbed, you have body parts and you explode into blood and stuff. Like, does that now count as being too severe because there is dismemberment there? I mean, shit, even in Roblox, when I was playing those Squid games with the boogeyman Jim Wool, in a couple of the games, if you fail, your like arms and head pop off. Like, it's what is the line? This vagueness and this reluctance to communicate leads to this situation where the community can only speculate on what exactly is and is not allowed, because even though YouTube writes out their definitions of what is and is not advertiser friendly, the enforcement paints a very different picture. It's very hard to play by their rules when we don't have a clear understanding of what they are or how they apply to the platform. It is so fucking frustrating that I continue to have to get splintered information from a ton of creators, as well as my own research, as well as my own YouTube contact, who also doesn't have all of the information at hand because internally YouTube doesn't allow him access to all the information at hand. So it's so fucking frustrating and so goddamn difficult. But it really seems like they're cracking down on a lot of things that make no sense at all. I just wanted to give a little follow-up here with more information I learned to keep everyone as knowledgeable on the policy changes as possible, so that way you can navigate what's best for your careers, your channels going forward. And yeah, that's really about it. So yeah.